Auprès de ma blonde, il fait bon, c'est bon, c'est bon. Auprès de ma blonde, il fait bon dormir.
Can France, the land of contrast and paradox, be expressed in an all-inclusive formula or a single phrase? Consider some of the aspects that make this country unique among her European neighbors. France is a country of rich and rolling plains, and also of austere, barren mountains. France is a land of farms, of business, of industry. It has always been a nation ready to tackle great projects. Yet, France will always remain the small craftsman's home. Life is easy in the great Mediterranean resort areas of southern France. But life is grim on the fog-shrouded Atlantic coast to the west. Where generations of fishermen's wives have anxiously awaited the return of the fleet. French women are so greatly influenced by their local environment that even today it is difficult to find a typical one. Is she Madame de Pompadour, the shrewd little Parisian courtesan? Or perhaps Joan of Arc? France is a land of faith, a nation of cathedral builders. But it is also the home of Voltairean skepticism. And it is in the shadow of this old abbey, in the most conservative quarter of Paris, where 20th century bohemians, contemporary artists, writers, and philosophers gather to argue, sip wine, and dream. France may be the only country where white-collar workers don cuffs to protect their sleeves at work. But this is one of the thrifty habits they practice in order that they may have money to enjoy their pleasures more fully. Foreigners may think these typical French diversions, but actually, the most popular recreations are fishing and pétanque, the local variety of bowling. Even so, France has its share of brilliant athletes, such as Borotra and Cochet, champion tennis players and skill-acknowledged masters of the volley at age 55. France is a land of rules and regulations, as well as the land of those who delight in ignoring them. Despite this range of extremes, of paradoxes and contrasts, there is a basic unity in France. It is expressed in a single idea. Let's look for a moment at this typical village, where the houses have slate or tile roofs, and where a medieval belfry towers over the more modern school. The clue lies here, on the lips of every French schoolboy. France is the garden of Europe. It is echoed by Jean Giraudoux, one of the great French authors, who writes, "Frenchmen are gardeners." Naturally, every Frenchman does not wear a straw hat, nor does he always carry a rake around with him. No, we mean something quite different. Maybe people can help us understand. This, for example, is Louis Mercier, a lathe operator in a Paris factory. He is finishing up his day's work at the bench skillfully and conscientiously. And every day when the whistle blows, he gets on his bicycle and pedals home to his modest house in the suburbs. But what is he doing today in downtown Paris, cycling by the old Pont Neuf, one of the most handsome bridges across the Seine? Now we see, right here across from the bookstalls that line the river, are the best seed shops in town. Louis has come all the way from the other side of Paris to buy leeks for his garden. Not just ordinary leeks, mind you. He insists on the variety known as giant emerald. You can't buy tasty leeks like that in the market. To appreciate their full flavor, you must select the seeds, sow them, and cultivate the shoots in a patch of ground which, no matter how small, has the one advantage of being all your own. And here is another Frenchman, old farmer Jacques, just coming in from a hard day of autumn plowing. His farm borders the local chateau. Farmer and squire are neighbors, and good neighbors don't pass by each other without a greeting. Bonjour, Monsieur le Comte. Fine weather for your lawns, and also for my fields. But for the time being, let's leave the old squire and his chateau and join Farmer Jacques, who has just arrived at his farm. The working day has ended, and it is time to find peace and relaxation. Will Giraudoux take down his gun and go hunting for quail? Or will he join his friends over a glass down at the inn? No, indeed. Old Giraudoux prefers his garden. But don't think he's working. A farmer tills his fields because he must. It's his job. But gardening is his relaxation. His fields look like those of his neighbors, but his garden is quite unique. A crystallization of his own imagination. And here is a third Frenchman, a notary, a town official. You seem to be in a great hurry, Monsieur Dupont de Fort. Why are you leaving your office so early and with such great strides? And why do you pass right by your front door in order to enter by the garden gate? You're too late. It's already happened. That long-awaited event. The whole family is bubbling with excitement. The pearl of your cactus collection, the rare plant which flowers only once every 4 years, came into bloom this afternoon. Our notary's garden seems typically French, and this is because he has created a harmonious blend of the pleasant and the useful, of flowers and fruits, a blend symbolizing the juxtaposition of luxury and toil. The word gardener in French covers both the man who cultivates his garden as well as the artist who designs it. Gardening in France is more than just a hobby. It is a way of life. A notary is something of a historian. Our friend is no exception. In his library, we can trace the whole history of French civilization through the image of French gardens alone. During the Middle Ages, when Germany was still a forest and England a rolling heath, there were already neatly cultivated fields all over France. Gardens that were real works of art were planted within the walls of the castles. And in them, the art of gallantry was born, an art that later spread all over Europe. After the Renaissance, King Louis XIV, called the Sun King, ushered in France's proudest century by building Versailles, the most beautiful palace of all, right in the center of a magnificent series of gardens. This marvel of good taste and formalism, expressing a triumphant bending of nature to the will of man, was designed by Le Nôtre, the greatest of all French gardeners. A perfect example of classical art, this work is as logical as the philosophy of Descartes, as austere as the 17th century French theater typified by Racine, as elegant as the music of Lully, as symmetrical as this facade designed by the great architect Monsard. Even today, the great fountains of Versailles symbolize the flowering of French culture during the golden age of royalty. But we can find a totally different style on the other side of the park at the Petit Trianon. In just a few steps, we have crossed 200 years. It was here in this replica of a country retreat that Marie Antoinette dressed up as a simple shepherdess. The spirit of pure reason had given way to gentle sentiment, a desire to live a life of rustic simplicity. One of the early advocates of this return to nature was Jean-Jacques Rousseau, philosopher and author of the Musings of a Solitary Stroller. Just like this nature lover, Rousseau enjoyed studying plant life on the shores of Hermoneville Lake. On an island of poplars can be found his tomb. Rousseau has been called the father of Romanticism and the French Revolution. Yet he is only one of the many who advanced the cause of liberty, which changed not only France's form of government, but also the style of her gardens. Bastille Day is vigorously celebrated by Frenchmen as the birth date of French democracy over 150 years ago. In place of the royal gardens, we find the democratic public gardens. There is one in every community, no matter how small, and it is the natural setting for the traditional July 14th ball. On this, the great national holiday, every farmer and his family flocks to the local town, including the squires. Proud, austere Count Téméricourt, symbolic of ancient France, joins in the fun by asking the notary's wife to dance. And Farmer Jacques, dressed in his Sunday best, escorts his daughter to the party. Who is her first partner? The notary, of course, Monsieur Dupont de Fort. And you can be sure that it isn't only on July 14th, anniversary of the fall of the Bastille prison, that the nobility hobnobs with ordinary people. How can class barriers hold out against hundreds of years of community living? Everybody knows each other here. The real life of France is the life of the provinces. France is a country where there is a little town just like this one every 10 miles or so. There are mostly small towns in France, and a few cities. But the one city, the big city, of course, is Paris. To study Paris from the aspect we have chosen, we must take a bird's-eye view of the city. From the first platform of the Eiffel Tower, let's try to pick out the little islands of green among the sea of roofs. Paris may have less green space than London or New York, but then each of the Paris gardens has a personality all of its own. At the end of the Avenue des Champs-Élysées, on the right bank, is the Tuileries, the Garden of Elegance. But flowers are only one of its popular attractions. Eventually, these creations fashioned by the great Paris dressmakers will be seen in every capital of the world. But first, they must pass muster before the unseeing gaze of the statues. And also before the critical eye of Mimi, the Parisian midinette, or seamstress. Behind the carousel arch stands the Louvre, once the Palace of Kings, now the most famous art gallery of all. Let us pay passing tribute to the Mona Lisa and rediscover in French painting our original garden theme in the works of such artists as Watteau and Claude Monet. And one day, this picture too may find its way into the Louvre. It is the brush of Édouard Goerg at work on a scene in the Luxembourg Gardens. These are on the left bank. They belong to the Latin Quarter. The park is filled with children and students who have come to study or to dream before the Medici Fountain. Here is the summit. And the Pont Neuf. Where Victor Hugo, the people's poet, and Jean Jaurès, the political philosopher, lie side by side. Not every section of Paris is so elegant, but even in Belleville, an older quarter of the city, the workers too have their gardens. The park is not always as crowded as this, but today is May Day, and therefore the Festival of Spring. All those in the neighborhood who were unable to go to the country come to walk up the Belvedere, a small hill. Mimi, the midinette, enhances her new spring ensemble with a spray of lilies of the valley. At the top of the hill, in this popular rendezvous, someone is waiting. Who is it? Louis Mercier, the lathe operator, of course. At the end of a wonderful day, Mimi returns, somewhat reluctantly, to her garden, the one she has planted on her balcony. But let us take leave of Mimi and Paris. Let's visit a beautiful region known as the Garden of France, where wild flowers grow side by side with the royal lily. It is the Loire Valley, a country of splendid chateaux, where the inhabitants speak the purest French and sing the most beautiful songs.
Ne pleurez pas la belle, je te donne un château sur le bord de la Loire. Je te donne un château sur le bord du ruisseau, tout près du béton, joli matelot.
More than anywhere else on earth, the landscape in France has been molded by man. Worked on for centuries, divided and redivided endlessly, every inch of the country presents a perfect balance of fields under cultivation, of buildings, and of running water. The highways are like country paths. Every stock recalls a forest. The smallest pool is an ornamental pond. A watering trough has the nobility of a fountain. And even the bridges seem to have been built to please the eye. Every French schoolboy knows Jean-Jacques Rousseau's famous maxim, "If I were rich, I would not waste time building a large house. I would live on the slope of a pleasant shady hill in a small rustic house, a white house with green shutters. And although a thatched roof is the best for all weathers, I would choose not gloomy slate, but tiles, because they seem cleaner and gayer than thatch. Gaiety, country work, and joyful games are the finest cooks in the world. The dining room would be everywhere, under a tree, on the soft green grass." The rim of the fountain would be my sideboard, and my dessert would be hanging from the trees. Today, 100 years later, every humble city dweller shares Rousseau's dream. "The only fruit I like," said Madame de Sévigné, "is the fruit from my own garden." That typically French art, the art of good eating, begins with a selection of an artichoke or a lettuce. There is, of course, the great cuisine of the gourmets, the glorious dishes, salmon à la Chambord, hare à la Royale, and the impeccable service of the great Paris restaurants. But the art of good cooking in France is also demonstrated in the preparation of a salad. The lettuce must first be dressed with a single spoonful of oil so that the tender leaves will not be attacked too brutally by the vinegar. One must be a gardener to appreciate such niceties, just as one must be something of a wine grower to appreciate good wine. Member of the French Academy and Nobel Prize winner, François Mauriac, tastes the Sauterne from his own vines. Will it have that bouquet which the finest vintages receive from the autumn sun? The Frenchman acquires his love of continuity in traditions and family from serving nature's needs as the seasons change. What folly to plant at his age. He'll not taste the fruits of labor. La Fontaine may have written this fable in a sarcastic vein, but in this case, the moral is different. The country squire, Count de Téméricourt, will never see this sapling grow into a sturdy tree. But he respects the old custom which decrees that the head of a family must himself plant a tree each time a new descendant is born. On such things are built the splendor of a park and the greatness of a nation. In France, a garden is always enclosed by a carefully kept hedge, fence, or wall for protection. As the old proverb goes, gardeners do not like to find stones in their gardens. The Frenchman has a sense both for individuality and ownership, and he instinctively keeps the same watchful eye on the walls of his private life and the frontiers of his country. But if one travels along the roads of France from north to south and from east to west, he finds that, despite the impression of being closed in upon itself, France has always been a crossroads of nations. Perhaps in the very center of France, one may still find a few of the original inhabitants, a race of small, thick-set mountain people, swarthy and round-headed. But near the ancient monolithic menhirs of Brittany, erected at least 2,000 years ago, lives a Celtic race which undoubtedly can trace its origin to the British Isles, in spite of today's Gallic mustaches. Many of the river barges that ply the Seine are manned by Breton sailors with Nordic blue eyes, a lasting vestige of the early Viking occupation on the riverbank. This patriotic Alsatian is a cousin, a first cousin, one might say, of the Fräuleins from across the Rhine. In the south of France, with its many traces of the ancient Latin world, the girls of Arles still have profiles like the women of ancient Rome. The renowned School of Medicine at Montpellier was founded by medieval Arabs. Today, Montpellier's botanical gardens, containing trees from every corner of the globe, symbolize the universal quality of French culture, seasoned by the contributions of many foreign peoples. Rightfully, this international garden is regularly visited by students of the French Union who have come from every continent. West Indies, Asia, Africa, Worldwide commerce continues to be an important pillar of the economic structure of France. From across the seas through this wide estuary of the River Gironde comes the crude oil so vitally necessary to every great industrial nation. We seem to have wandered far from our little man with a straw hat, but have we really? The fact that the tiniest little watercourse is always a work of art makes it easier, perhaps, to understand the work of the French engineers who, diverting the whole course of the River Rhone, have constructed the most beautiful hydroelectric plant in Europe. Today, France expresses herself in concrete as yesterday she did in marble, always with the same blend of grandeur and moderation, of balance and imagination. These are the virtues of the country of roses and lilacs, where everything ends with a song.